Okay, so we've got this lovely topic, autumn makes, which is really lovely, isn't it? So obviously the one I've gone for is jam, but there's all sorts. There's one with a pan. There's this one as well, which has got the apricot jam in it. But the reason I thought, obviously, it's really nice because it's autumn and there's more produce and everything about. But one of the reasons I've chosen this topic is for those who've been coming a while, um, we've done quite a lot of reflections on different kinds of surfaces. So we've done bubbles, we've looked at like clear, clear reflections like on glass, like we did, I think, light bulbs and vases, and and we've also reflections on water. So I thought it'd be nice to continue, and even if you join in, if you haven't been here in the other sessions, that's fine because it's in a topic, a standalone topic on its own. It's just really, really fascinating. It's one of those things where, at first glance, you think, oh yeah, it's just a silver, pan or pot or whatever. But actually, when you start to look in, you see that there's all these amazing colours reflected in the actual surface of the metal itself. And it gave us all these shapes and colours and tones. So that's one of the really interesting things to look at tonight. So, so there's a few things going on. There's the colours and things as well with the pastel. There's the metal reflections and how things reflect, how different colours reflect on that, depending on where you are, where the light source is coming from, all sorts of things. So that's really interesting. So we're going to get the light on things. But also the other thing that's really interesting is we've also got a little bit more work on ellipsis where we've got another curve. So I've got lots of curves here all the way around. So again, that will give us a really interesting idea of what to do. Okay, so yeah, so what I would say is there is quite a lot of points there. So, focus on just a couple. You don't need to get everything, really accurate, etc. So, if you haven't done much drawing of ellipsis, getting these curves on things, that's a big thing in itself, actually. So really don't worry about everything, all the content and everything, because it can be quite difficult. I'm just going to grab a ruler. And I'm going to just divide this page into approximate. This is a tip as well. If you find it difficult to work out where the middle is, just fold your paper over. I'm fine when I'm sat over it, but when I've got it a little bit further up, I can't always tell exactly where that goes. So it's more or less. So this is quite helpful for kind of getting proportions as well when you first start mapping out things on your pastel sheet. So you can choose a background that's similar to any of the tones in there. This looks quite, bright, but actually it's quite like a taupe colour. But you can go for anything. You can even go for like the colour of the jam. You can go for the background colour. You can go for the some of the metals, like a grey one. But I mean, pretty much anything works, to be fair. So we just see that colour building up a little bit on it there. So I would tend to go in with a pastel that's 1 or 2 shades lighter to map it out. Now, if you've got rather than pencils, you've got the pastel, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to try and find one that's I'm going to use. I'm going to use this one actually. I might have used grey. Now mine's going to be a lot darker. So when you're doing it, go for one that's much, much lighter. I will just put the grid on my paper is more likely. And if you can do it nice and lightly, it will just rub straight out basically. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah, you can see that a bit there. So I am just popping this grid on just really for demonstrating purposes, but you can do it totally by eye if you prefer. It just develops confidence, does this. So yeah, so if you make yours really light, then you can easily smudge it out, as in light of hand. So all I'm going to do is kind of map this out a little bit to start with. And I'm gonna have to go a shade darker than that, otherwise you're gonna really struggle to see it, I think. So I'll go in with the grey there, which is that one. So all I'm looking at here is kind of where the bottom of this comes of the jar. And actually, when we start to use, when we do use a grid like this, just a quarter grid, you can see how much of that, proportionally, how much it takes up of this particular quarter and comes round here. So, for example, I might just put whereabouts the bottom mark is. Now, it is a little bit slightly difficult to see, is that because, so I'm just going to pop in like the bottom mark first, because some of this actually makes the jar look a really strange shape. It's because the shadow is almost the same colour underneath as the rest of it. But don't worry about that for now, because we can kind of work into that. But just put whereabouts that kind of little bit of a shadow is there. I'm also looking, that's a really wonky line, that one, isn't it? I'm also like looking at where the sieve comes. That's a bit easy to pop in. So I'm going to pop that in to start with because it kind of overlaps here. So I might look at, it's almost halfway in this section, not quite. So I'm just going to bring that down. And then I think before what I was saying about with an ellipsis, if you put your right across the bottom, if you put something straight like a ruler or a pencil, you can just see how far, what the kind of depth of that ellipsis is. Is it like a bit narrower? So I'm just going to pop where this comes up here. So I'm going to pop that across there, and then I'm just kind of dropping it down whereabouts I think it comes. And we can always adjust it. This is our first mark on there, like that. And then I've got a marker as to how far down this rest of this jar does actually come. But that might have even gone down maybe a little bit too far into there, but we'll see. So what I've got here now is I can bring out and put a little mark whereabouts I think the edge of the jar comes to here. And it kind of comes out, and we can also check, does it lean? So that's straight. So it's just leaning out ever so slightly, isn't it? And then this side is fairly straight up. So I'm just going to pop a little mark there as to how far it comes out. And then the same over here, how far it comes into this quarter here, which I think it's not quite halfway, so it's just a little bit further in. And then we can then kind of start to make a plan really of where it comes. So I'm going to kind of try and get this ellipsis at the bottom. And again, if you want to bring it across, but as I said, it's got an extra bit on the bottom there. So it isn't quite as deep as we think, but when we add that little bit of shadow on there, it is deeper. So nice light touch when you're mapping all this out. And then we're just going to have a little look at where the top ellipsis comes in as well. So I'm coming down from where this colander is. Like I said, I'm going to move mine up a bit. I think I brought it down too far. So it kind of comes out round here, and then again, it should follow the bottom be fairly similar to the bottom ellipsis. So I'm looking there. So when I pop where this top is across, it just kind of dips down a little bit. It's not really steep because of the angle we're looking at it on, but it's not really narrow either. I'm just carrying that round there. But again, we can, lift and move and shift these things. And then I just want the corner, like the edge of the jar to come on like that. And then again, we tend to be following a very similar ellipsis because these are all falling down, aren't they? Like a similar, it's almost like buildings. You kind of get they're fairly parallel. So that helps us because we can kind of follow the line above it. And then we can get the edge that's coming round. Just bring that out to the side. And again, it's almost got an edge on the top, hasn't it? another ellipsis where it's kind of comes out and it flattens there where it's catching the light. So I'm bringing that out. And we can follow, you know, we can actually do that, can't we? We can follow the edge of the one above it again. I'm not going to make a really solid line though, because it's just kind of showing whereabouts it kind of comes out. And then we can join up those sides there. Well, I'm going to bring mine down ever so slightly, or it might be actually, it's this one that's in. I'm going to move that up, and then that will feel a bit more, that's better. I think I felt a bit not quite right there, it's just that one. The bottom of that colander there. I'll get rid of that one, it'll feel a bit better there. And then again, you know, bring this one down. And then if you want to make any adjustments from there, if you're thinking, oh, well, what's, you know, just have a little look at where your proportions are and see, you know, if you want to make something a bit wider or taller or whatever. You know, there's a shadow there. So we've kind of got like one of the big key features in, and obviously we've got the top half to do. You can always just pop in, you can always just pop on the first one as well. Like I might look at this ladle and then I know that I can sandwich this between the two. So if we get the ladle in a fairly good position, or you can just wait and get the other bit in, whichever you feel. I tend to like to do a top and a bottom, and then I know that everything's going to be in and in proportion. But it's you know, but you can just go work your way up. It's fine. Because there's not too much to go wrong on this one, as in there's not like loads and loads of items in there. So you can put as much in or as little. I mean, I'm going to miss out this pan at the back, I think. And I might not even put those glasses on. I might just focus on these things here. But there's all sorts, isn't there? Like the other pan and everything's really nice. So I'm looking at how far, again, proportionally this comes in. It almost comes into the front of that, doesn't it? But when you look, if you're not sure, you look at where the bottom of this ladle is, it's almost 2/3 of the way down. So, just divide that little bit up. Yeah, it's just under 2/3 of the way down, and we've got the jam on it and everything, haven't we? So I'm going to put the bottom there, and again, you can always adapt it. So I'm just looking at how far out the ladle comes into this section again. There we go. And how far it comes out into this section. Now this is a bit on its side, isn't it? It's kind of a bit tilted. So I'm going to pop the end bit, which comes almost right over this side. So like within that section, that's halfway through. It still comes over. It's about 3/4 over in this section, isn't it? So that's half. That's about 3/4. So that's the very end. That just gives us a bit of a help, you know, if we use each of those to help us. And then again, we've got this fabulous ellipse here, the curve. Now I'm doing this one by eye, but again, if you want to kind of just go across both edges like that, it's tilted, and then you can see, you know, are you getting it fairly, you know, fairly accurate. Fairly accurate is good enough. Right, that is when we're doing a little study, we're just trying to make the lines and everything. And then obviously we've got the front side. Now I know the bottom of it comes down probably just here. So I've got to make sure that that ellipsis is not like really deep, but we also need in the bottom of the ladle as well, which is fabulous, isn't it? All the colours in this are amazing when you start to look. And then we're just following that, you know, look at this curve here. And it's a bit on a tilt, it should. So we've got just something in place for now. We can always adapt it a bit later when we're putting more things into it. Might want to blow some of the chalk dust off. And then we've just got this middle section. So, you know, even if you're doing the other jams or the pan, again, there's plenty to see. And then this one, we've got the bottom of the colander, and then we've got the lip of the colander here. which finishes just below it, doesn't it? So that's quite handy. So we know that that's going to be just below it. I might need to put a little bit more on there. And again, you know, we're looking at how far out. So we can use quite nicely now the edge of the ladle and kind of get this curve in. And again, if you're not sure about the curve, this one is a much more, you know, it's kind of more of a narrow, it's not too deep, is it? So we can look at that, put that in, and then join up that with the edge of the lip that we've kind of popped in place there to see if it works. And again, here we can see it's coming out of underneath the ladle, but it's coming right, it's coming right off the page there, almost where it's been held by a hand. And we discussed this morning that, you know, the hand was a bit terrifying for a lot of people, because we think, oh no, I've got all this lovely silverware in. Don't worry about that. Well, I'll show you a little bit of a tip for that. But you can leave anything out if you want. It's just, there was a debate going this morning. If you don't put the hand in, will it look like it's floating? But again, it's entirely up to you. And then we've got the edge of this colander here, and again we've got another ellipse there. And then the rest of it's under the hands, you can't quite see, but we have some fabulous colours, which is what we're going to kind of zone in on. I'm just going to kind of pop out where this finger's coming out here, just so we can see that there is an edge of a hand. It's very, obviously it's very loosely done, so we can sort that later. So that's going to look like some very strange shapes in there for a hand, and that's okay. So, you know, you can decide whether you want to put everything in. I'm just going to focus on that for the moment. There is quite a lot in there. So really, once you've got a basic, you know, your basic shape in there, all you need to do is to be thinking about colours. So just as a reminder, because it's a while since we've come to do the pastels, with the pastels, more often than not, what we have to do is go for best fit colour, because the pastel set comes as it is. We can layer a couple of colours on top of each other when we're putting it on, but again, sometimes you're not going to end up with a colour. So really, pastels are about the best fit, and also they're about really exploring with colour, and we're quite brave when we use them because they are limited. If we were to mix these colours, we could put all sorts to get a nearish colour, but as I said, the pastels come in the pastel chalks or in the pencils, and we're trying to find the best fit. So there's a few rules with pastels that do help, and that is really, if we can get the darker ones in place first, if possible, then it stops us kind of transferring like the darker areas into any light ones we've done, which can make them muddy. So the only danger zone really with pastels, and it doesn't matter actually if it happens, because once we do it, we're like, yeah, I won't do that, is making our pastels muddy, because we can overmix on the paper. So one way we can help ourselves do that, not do that, I'm just going to do it with a pencil, but you can measure it out with you can do it with just a pastel. I'm just kind of I'm getting this darker area of jam loveliness here, just to measure out whereabouts it's going to go, to be fair. I'm going to go back to my pastels as well. So I know from this morning as well, my pastels, I've got a dark one here, a slightly brighter pink, and a red, and none of them are going to look exactly, but I'm just going to explore using them. So I'm going to go in with I'm going to actually go in with a slightly darker colour all around. I'm going to go in. So with the pastels, putting them on, you might want to test them on a bit of tester paper first. So using it on its side, if you're new to pastels, certainly as well, and then you kind of just blend it in. Now, some paper is much more grainy than others. So if you've got a really grainy paper, that's fine. If you want, you can add a little bit more pastel in so that you can't see as much of the texture through it. But some people love the texture. So again, it's just exploring how it feels. Certainly for the first couple of times, really, do I like the grain? Do I not like the grain? So I quite like the grain, but some people like it much smoother. Just let make sure I've got a wipe handy as well, because what we want to do is before we move on to a lighter colour, we want to make sure our finger's clean, otherwise we'll muddy that. So anyway, going back to that, I'm going to go in with kind of my darkest pastel here around the edge where I can see it's a little bit, it's a bit darker there. Sometimes you can put like a dark blue over your purple and it can make it really deep, much deeper, or a browny colour. So you can just test that. So I'm fixing that in place, blowing off the chalk dust because we don't want that fanning around. And then I'm just going to go in fairly still with a deeper colour. So I want a good coverage. I'm not being frightened of going in too deep, I'm putting plenty on because it's a bit of a nicer experience when you can move that pastel around. Sometimes if it does like, so if you're going lightly like that can be harder because you can't, you can't move the pastel around as much. Whereas if you have more on, you can do that. The other thing is I've started at the top just because you can end up getting really pastel up your arm and it can take half your picture off. So it's just an easier way of doing it. That's why I tend to, but there might be a time where you just think, I want to do a bit at the bottom, and that's absolutely fine. Just got to be a bit more careful when you put your hands. So I'm still focusing on the darker ones. I might just go in and darken that edge even more. I've got a pencil in there, which is a perfect one. So as you can see, I'm definitely in best fit here. I'm still having an explore actually on this one. The only thing that might happen, and again, it's one of those great learning curves when it does, it's like, okay. The only other side of it is you can end up saturating you can saturate it. So I can like go in and putting more pastel on, and then it reaches saturation point as your paper where it just will not take any more. And then what happens is eventually it might pull up a bit of the paper, or it might start just literally lifting back off. So you'll know if you do reach saturation point because that will happen. And again, it's one of those things where when you're exploring paper for the first time, because all of the papers are so different, you've just got to get used to the paper you've got and how your pastels react to it, because they're all very different pastels. Some can be soft, some can be harder, and some can be somewhere between. So each paper and pastel responds differently. So I've gone in with that, and I'm just going to finish off this little section. So like acrylics, we can do this exactly the same. We can go in with a lighter, build up these lighter on top, which is, we're looking at using a layered approach even with pastels. The difference is if we're going in with a lighter colour, and again, just test your colours just to see if you're happy with it, because there's also, is it orange, is it red, what colour do you want to go in with? You can even test it, over the top of your other colour. But if we're going in with another colour on top that's lighter or brighter, we're going to try and avoid blending that in with there, because it will end up muddy, the colour, the brighter colour. So what we're almost doing when we're going over the top with a brighter colour or a lighter colour is we kind of just putting a lot more pressure on that, kind of leaving the mark, but very lightly. So subsequent layers are lighter. If I wanted to put a highlight on top of that, so blowing up that, so you can still see that. If I want a highlight like on the edge of my jar or something, I'm going to be, giving quite a lot of pressure there. And I'm like literally just giving that a tap in so it fixes into place. So we can layer up really happily as long as we're not over blending and making things muddy underneath. And again, you just got to have a go with it and explore it. Just have a try and see. So I'm going to go in with this kind of frothiness here that I can see, and then there's a bit of a lighter patch over here. So I'm just going to try and replicate the shapes I can see, and it's like a bit foamy, isn't it? And again, rather than doing this, if we're not using a brush, then we're using our hand like a brush, if that makes sense, to kind of wiggle and get the shapes and things in that you want. So nice to just lightly pressing that in. And then there's this section over here. People were seeing all sorts of lovely colours this morning. I'm just going to go in with a bit of a lighter blue in there rather than a white. I think that's what I can see. But you explore with whatever colours you think. There we go. And then that little bit's done. So I'm going to go in with a base colour now. There's so many beautiful colours when you start looking in here. I'm going to go in with a base colour that's a bit greyish. And then I'll add my shadows and my light ones and colours, which is a bit of a slightly different way of doing it this time. I'm not putting the darkest into place, but that's because they come over the top. So this is the other thing. Sometimes that rule doesn't work for us about adding the darks first, just because logistically how something actually is layered. And when we're looking at something like the reflection on the metal and the pans and things, actually the base of the metal is underneath, and then what we have are the reflections of light and dark and colour on the top. So we've almost got to kind of get that base colour in first. So the rules are really helpful to help us in some respects, and then other times they're just not. So it's a case of taking what works for each individual item, really. If something's dark and it layers over the top, it's as simple as that. That's what it does. So I'm going to put some of these grey colours in here. But you can use any, you can try blue, any colour. I am going to go in next with my darks though, because I want those to kind of go in, and you can see where the jam is, can't you? It's fantastic. So again, just decide on what colour it is you want to go in with. Now, the other thing is, you can use the edge of your pencil, to kind of get a nice shadowy area. Sometimes people say, I've lost definition. So I've gone in, because this is a small, really tiny piece of work. If I was on A4 or A3, I could easily much blend that better with my finger, because it's a small piece. I've just got this blending tool, which is like got a little rubber on the end. And you can just bring that darker line, the shadow where the shadow is, and just set it into place like that. Or you can use a pastel pencil to do that. But as I said, if my work was bigger, I wouldn't be using that. I didn't use any of this today when I had an A3 piece. With more space to kind of get your finger in. So yeah, so I just need to kind of get some of those lovely colours in again. Just where the shadows are, and then I know then that they're fixed in. Now we're also, I think we're also, something like this particularly, this ladle almost seems like it's, I'd say, it's almost like a hammered effect. So it's a little bit bumpy. So we've got that to think about. So I am going to set that in place, but again, nice and light. I don't need to over mix it in. And then what else have we got? I'm going to go in with, but again, it's whatever else you can see in there. I'm going to go in with a bit more pinky red here where I can see that. And I'm kind of just wobbling this about, making a bit of the texture that I can see in there. And then again, what other colours can I see? Is anything else? And once you start looking, it's like, oh wow, there's that. And all I'm doing is really representing the shapes that we can see there. And I'm then go in, see what else there is. I'm going to go in with any kind of brights or lights. I'm going in with a peachy one here, just because that's what I feel like I could see. But again, you know, have a look, and then I'm going to go in with a lighter creamy one here. It's a bit brighter where that light's really hitting it there. And then over this side where it hits, you know, where it's just, you know, obviously it's capturing the light in these places at the side here. Just kind of fixing it in. And that's the beauty of reflections, you know, we're literally just popping in whatever we can see, you know. You know, is there another colour? Might be a little bit of I'm seeing the blue now today. I didn't see that this morning. Put that in. And then thinking about the top of it, you know, where is there a shadow there? Or I might need to get a grey out actually. Grey. Use the edge of your pastel if you've got the space to, or you know, just use a bit of a pastel pencil. And I'm just kind of popping in because underneath there there's a real shadow. Can you see that underneath? And it helps define it. But on the top, we've got where you'd expect to, light tends to hit things on the top. So, I mean, you can go in with a darker grey to do that if you want to. I've just gone in with the blue, but I just want, it does need that shadow line sometimes to make it feel that there's a definite shape to it as well. And again, it's light on the top, and then just below the surface, below the you know, the highlighted rim of it there. Again, you get this shadow around it. That's interesting. That's just the top bit, isn't it? So there's a lot going on just in the top bit, isn't there? So I'm now going to go in with the real highlights. This is where I'm going to press down. And you don't have to make this a continuous line. You can just kind of capture little bits where the light captures the top of that, the top of this ladle rim. Sometimes it's, you know, it just makes it much more clear actually, just by breaking it up a little bit. And again, across the top here, it goes, it does seem to go above that shadow line as well, which is what you'd expect. And if it doesn't feel kind of dark enough, just experiment using a little bit more pressure. And then I'm just going to, that last bit I've just done with the white, I'm just going to give it a tap. That's it. The pressure should be enough of there to see what we've got in there. And then there's all these lovely colours underneath. But I'm just going to take a pause just to see how everyone's getting on before I do that next bottom bit. Okay, so we're just going to keep working in the same way, you know, getting all these bits and pieces on there, getting the dark ones in. The interesting bit about this actually is that we have an extra layer on the bottom of here, in that we have like jam as well on the bottom of the label. That'll be the last thing that goes on because it goes over the top of everything else. Goes over the top of the colours reflected, the shadows, the light reflected, and then lastly you've got that jam like kind of hanging off it. So that's really interesting, you know, and it really kind of gives us quite a lot of, you know, quite a lot of information really about how layers work and how many some things can actually have on. So for a start, again, you know, if something's got a shape to it as well, if one of these has got a shape to it, it's kind of coming round. and pop that on like that. We're just trying to create, again, you know, we're not trying to create a photo. We're trying to create our artist impression of what we can see. And I know I say that a lot, but it's so true. There isn't obviously a name for art that looks incredibly realistic, which is hyper realism, but it's a very specific thing. And actually, that's not what we're trying to do. We're just exploring colour and line and tone. Yeah, if that's really dark in here, and I don't really have anything that colour, so I'm having to kind of layer over some other colours there. I mean, I could try brown, but again, this particular set that I have really gives it a bit of depth, more depth there. Doesn't this particular set, the colours are not really dark, they're a bit lighter, a bit more vibrant, but so that's fine. Again, like we were saying, you just go for the colour that you can use. This in. Put these ready peachy jams on the top as well. So again, you know, we've got some other colours, got to work out, you know, is it a reflection or is it the jam? This is the extra layer we're thinking about here. So I'm going to go in with some of the colours I can see I feel are a bit more still in reflection. I tap those lightly. Just keep blowing off anything that's in the way. But yeah, there's some really fascinating colours in there. Go with a bit of blue on here. Tap those in. Fix them in place nice and lightly. Nice. And I'm going to get the highlights on top of that. Again, I'm going into those highlights before I put the jam over the top. And really just putting quite a bit of pressure on there. Sometimes you really like just a tiny tap, and sometimes the pressure is enough that you put on. So that's really, really bright reflection underneath here. Looks very much like the light source is coming from that side, doesn't it? 'Cause it's coming over. And popping those highlights in. And then there's just that little bit of jam to go over the top, which is actually sticking out. So again, I'm going to go for a slightly different tone. I want some reds. I'm going to bring some oranges in as well to kind of lighten the red that I've got, because the red, and again, it's about choice. The red I've got is quite a dark red. So I'm going to go in, pop this red in here. make it a bit angular like it is something sticking off a bit. And again, I've got to be careful how I fix that in, so I've put quite a lot of pressure on. And then I'm just going to go in over the top here with some of this lighter colour to hopefully get a little bit of the sense of jam. Aha, found another red. Actually, let's test that one. Oh, it's a bit better. A bit less bright on the orange. And that's it there. So I'm going to just look at a few other bits here now. I'm picking out where the jam's over the top. So I'm just going to pop that on. At the moment, our brain's like not able to really kind of recognize why that colour is there. But once we have the rest of the picture and it all makes sense to the brain basically, and we're much more comfortable. So what you can do with that jam, I know it sounds really, this is kind of a small detail, is just get a lighter kind of a highlight and almost we're just giving that jam a bit of an edge so that we can see it sticking off. What it does just kind of makes it stand off the page a little bit. So that's what I'm doing, just adding a tiny bit of a shape highlight so we can see this. It's just a trick to get it to pop off. There we go. And then, then we can work our way down, look at the other colours underneath and the top and everything. So I'm going to get this. So yeah, so you can put that dark background in if you want. I'm going to hang on because I don't know how dark I want to go. So I might leave this bit as well until I decide. I'm just going to work down, look at all of these shades and work through those. So we've got some, whatever you can see, I can see some greys. I'm going to try and get the shadows in place first. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to go for the darker ones. That will give edge the ladle beautifully as well. So just like looking at even the shapes on the inside, like kind of get like these diffused shapes of that are darker. It's just working out what kind of how you want to represent the dark ones and how you want to represent the light ones. You put any brights in there alongside it, or is it just all muted colours? So we're just making these decisions as we go. I'm just going to kind of break this up a little bit with some grey. But I'm also going to pop in all that. So if you want to kind of diffuse a colour, like so, we want to kind of, we've got this dark one, but if you want to bring in a little bit of a light edge in there, just kind of wiggle that one over the top, and you can just very slightly pull it over. Just softens it down a little bit. Because it's a similar tone of grey, it's not going to, be too much of an issue. And then in here, again, there's some really interesting colours. So again, I'm just going to bring those in. Just going to find the colours that you want on your palette to represent it. And then we've got this really bright light through here. That's really interesting, isn't it? So I am going to go in really bright. We know that it's being reflected for sure down here. So I'm just going to go in really bright down this side. Just not lightly kind of pop that in over the top. And again, where it's quite bright around here, we get like almost a strike of the, and this is what happens, isn't it, on the reflections of things. It gets, some are a bit softer and others are just really sharp shapes. So it's just up to us to kind of work out, you know, is it a diffused light or is it a, you know, a really sharp, really kind of sharp shape. I think this is a bit diffused at the top, so I'm very lightly pulling that over without disturbing the underlay. Like that. And while I've got this light out, it looks a bit strange at the minute because we need the balance of it. I'm just going to pop in over the top lips there, which we get on the top of this rim. Which does help again a little bit. So I'll put lots of pressure on there over the top, and then we've got this one coming around over the top again. And you don't have to do it all in one go if you feel it's going to kind of pull the shape out. Just do it in little, you know, just little stops and starts. And keep kind of adding to it. So we've got some darker colours, some pinky ones under there. You know, there's all sorts going on. It's really fascinating, isn't it? All we can do is pop in what you think you can see there. All we can do. More shadows. And again, we're just kind of getting any shadows between there. That helps with the definition. It's not a lot down here, that one. But there is over that side. There we go. And then we've got all this kind of colour in. So again, it's up to us to just decide what colour that is that we'll be popping in here. And just really enjoy the observation side of it because it's just fascinating. You know, we won't look again at this in the same way. We'll be like, oh gosh, I really haven't realised so many fantastic things reflected in there. It's just interesting, isn't it? We'll pop this lips shadow of this because it does underneath there. We've got a little bit of a shadow on the top here because it's in the shadow. And then here, the haze, we've got a very light one. It's not bright, is it? It's not really bright white. And then one with the blue there. So we have got some reflection over the top there. It's just not as bright as the white. So I'm going for a contrast with a lighter colour, but I've gone for something blue rather than really bright white because that one here is so much brighter than this one. So this is where we can use balance of our composition to work out which one it is, you know. And then our light bit comes underneath that. So again, I'm going to go for something light, but I'm not going to make it as bright as the white. I'm going to go for a peachy colour. And then it helps us with the different areas to be kind of quite realistic only realistic in, where the light source is and how much light we get and how strong that light is in different parts of it. So we've got the edge of this as well. That will help us, help our eye to work out what's going on. So that can be at the moment it's us, isn't it? We're halfway through and it's telling our brain it's all right, it's okay, it looks, we're not quite sure what it is yet, but it will be fine. So yeah, so we're just working out, what colours are we laying down first? What's working? What do I need to do? Fixing things into place. And then just overlaying with some of these different colours. And then looking at what other colours we've got. So I'm going to go in with these shadows, get those in where it's a bit darker. You pull these lines down, you get these lovely linear effect on some of these. By all means, go in with a slightly brighter colour if you want to. Because this now is almost showing the colour of the worktop reflected in it. It's fascinating, isn't it? So we've got a whole different thing, and then we've got the top of the jam jar as well, and on the bottom of it. Just really, really interesting. And then here we've almost got like tops of the jars and these circular shapes in. So there's so much going on in there. I'm going to go in with a taupey colour there, I think, which shows this one, I think. I mean, literally, like, just look at the shapes that it's making and pop those in. So interesting, isn't it? And then I'll pop the lightest ones over the top. It's here where you might think, oh, actually, I needed to make it a bit longer or whatever, and that's a good opportunity to do that as well. If you need to change your shape or whatever, that's fine. You can do that at any point. There's a lot going in it, on it. And if it's too faffy, you can always just like cover with one surface colour and then work into it. So I'm going to just pop in. There's almost like little um, puddles of colour here. And get a little bit of a taupe one and a bit of brown here. This is where you get these like, it's like the tops of the jars reflected, isn't it? It's so interesting to look on the side. I mean, you don't need to go into that level of detail either if you don't want to. That's absolutely fine. Just pop in what what you're starting to see at the moment. The more we observe, the more we start looking at things. But You don't need to get absolutely everything in the first time you do it. But if you're really enjoying the looking, then by all means pop it in. And then put a little bit in the middle there, like right. So I'm going to go in with these light colours now. Because I've got this light source coming over here. I'm going in, getting these light ones over the top. This is where we need more pressure again. And less blending. And then we've got these really interesting highlights. Mm. There we go. And then again, you know, everything's reflected the other way. So it's so fascinating. Quite a dark area here. We're just still literally, you know, recreating some of these shapes that we've got coming in here. If you want those to kind of like be a bit more blendy, you just pull them over the top a little bit, pull it down over the top just gently. You get a little bit of a draggy mark over, but that's fine because it helps with the effect there. So many colours. Underneath the finger, working the finger out. Oops, sorry, it just dropped down my camera. In the middle. Right, just to take that back up, just bear with me. Sorry. Oh, crikey, what's it doing now? Right, doing that. That's beautiful stuff. I'm expecting it to drop. Oh, there we go. I think we've more or less got to the beginning. Yeah, so we're just continuing really kind of pulling these shapes down. And then we want like a refracted version of the jam, top of the jam lid in there. So interesting, isn't it, in that one? So I'm just going to go with one colour to start with, and then build in those other colours. And what's too far up now? Maybe a lighter version over the top. That's the beauty of the pastels, though. You know, you can always kind of pop a lighter one back in. Just tap it in. So it needs to start further down and drop down a bit further. Right. So I just need to pop there's quite a dark shadow line under here. Just to put some shape back. Sometimes when you've got the colour wobbling about, you then lose the shape of your ellipsis, which is fine. So just don't, by all means, just pop it back in where you see a shadow to help you do that. Sometimes, when we've got all of these different wavy lines going all over it, can actually make it almost a different shape, can't it? And then it's quite confusing to our minds as to what's actually, where the dark shadows and things are. And I can't work out whether that's where that gap, if that's actually where there's a handle or not. It almost looks like it could be there, where that gap is. It could be a handle. I'm not entirely sure. So again, all we can do is pop in what we think we might be able to see. So, and again, just getting all these other shadow areas in this lovely part section here that's reflected. Make sure you tap off or, just blow some of that dust as well, because it might be getting a bit heavier at this point. Got a lot of layers on, haven't we? So again, we're building up to the lightest areas now as well, making sure we've got those on over the top of this area. So it is quite light. So I'm going to go in with a almost white there, and plenty of pressure again. So we don't need to do too much. Don't need to do too much blending with our finger over those very dark colours. Again, we're getting some really interesting shapes there, aren't we? Which help us to kind of see what's happening. And again, you might just check that you've got the balance. Is there anything else that's light on there that you feel you want to lighten up or pop in? And then obviously we've got the underside here as well, which is lovely, isn't it? It comes straight down. A lot of the shapes there are almost more simplified because they come straight down. So I am going to just have a little look at, just going to pop him back in, just a bit of this shape. And then again, you can start to, pop in all those different shadows. And we're going with the darker ones first. I just wiggle mine side to side to get those little lines there. Grays and blues and all sorts, just whatever you can see in there. You don't need too much working into, to be fair, on this side. This side. And just kind of drag them out with your finger. Or if you've got your blending tool, you could do it with your blending tool. So interesting, isn't it? And then we've got this warmer area here at the front, so we're going with that. Can put some warmth back in as well if you think it's got a bit, you know, there's some warmer areas maybe. Just pop those back in. What we got, and then obviously we've got some ones that are much lighter and brighter. Yeah, you know, if you want to soften them, just kind of just move them softly into one another. Or if you want to make anything a bit brighter, do that. And then again, you know, once you start to look at the colours underneath this again, going on, you can use that to create the shape as well. So there's obviously all of the jar as well underneath. And depending on the colour background you want to pop in, if you want to just use the paper to enhance it, again, once you work your background in, look, that can kind of create the edge of your, you know, some of these other areas. I'm going to pop a little bit of the background in here, but I know that I definitely want in, just so that it does that. So we can start to see, you know, okay, it's just make sure your fingers are clean in between, because that's when it can kind of spread. But it just starts to create the shape of some of those areas as well, which is what we need sometimes, because you know, the pastel is quite loose. So, you know, whether you want to keep it the same area, the same colour or not, it's up to you. I'm going to pop it in a similar colour to what I've just used on that side, so I don't really want to go in with a really dark one. So I know I'm going to pop in a little bit here, but I'm going to leave the rest until I've got the jam jar in, just to make sure, you know, I don't need to bring it in or whatever to make it similar. So we've got all sorts going on in there. You know, saying if you're wanting to get the topping, you can then decide, you know, do I want to make that dark up there, or am I happy with it lighter? Only you can decide that. Sometimes you think, I don't want to make it too dark, or you might want to. So, you know, have a little think about that. You can always try some colours elsewhere on your paper. So I'm looking at this, it's quite dark. Thinking, do I want that? Well, just for demonstrating purposes, I'll go in just to, so you can just get a sense how it changes it. So because it's obviously lighter underneath, we need to make that quite thick. What it will do is make this pop. So at the moment it's quite muted. See if I can get these little background colours in there as well, and some bright. But just be a bit careful of the edge here. That might look, trying to get these fused bits of light in there. But yeah, it's going to make everything jump out that we've just done, basically. That's what the dark will do. But the reason I say think about it first is that not everybody likes a strong contrast. Sometimes people aren't that keen on a really strong contrast on a painting. So if you think, oh no, it's too dark and that's too light, then, you know, by all means you don't need to do that. some kind of a light in there, isn't it? So there is where we can use the edge of the pastel, where those colours come to create a more defined edge. So I'm going to go back in with this one and the rest of it and do this colour. So now if I was doing this on my, like for my own purposes, I probably wouldn't go in with such a dark background colour, just because I quite like it a bit, sometimes a little bit lighter, but it's good to demonstrate just to see, so you can see how it, you know, how it actually changes. So I am going to go in just a little bit carefully here. Around the edge. Yeah. And make sure it's nice and fixed. So you can see now that's really starting to pop, isn't it? It's getting a really, getting a really busy line. And it really, you know, it really jumps out now, doesn't it? When it's because we've also got the light on it. So I'll pop this end of this, where the needle's going to go there. We'll leave where the hand's going to go. And we'll just have a little pause in a moment. We've gone into real detail tonight with this, haven't we? Just lovely to see, you know, how we can get these effects really, just by putting the colours on and things like that. So that's, you know, that's pretty much the difference of it really. We've got a little bit of whatever that light one is there. I can't quite tell, but there's a bit of a mm, you know, so obviously, you know, we're working our way through. You can darken a surface again and again. I haven't put this on yet, but we will do. I'm just going to take a pause and see how you're getting on, because I know there's a lot of things to consider in there. So we've got the jar to do, and we'll have a little go at this hand as well. I'm going to get the jar in. Once the jar's in place, everything makes a little bit more sense to us in terms of what's going on up here, because at the moment it feels quite abstract and floating. But once we cement the jar in, the brain's just like, oh, it's jam making. It's like sometimes you just got to have certain elements in place for it to make sense. So just going to try and get some nice darker areas down at the bottom. But I'm going to go in with all darks on here, and then I'll adapt it as we go. Put the lighter ones over the top. So again, you know, it's best fit with the pastels that you have. The jar's actually always a bit quicker, just because it's one set piece where there's so many bits going on in there, isn't there? So I'm going to kind of just follow this just around a bit further. Just get really on its side, pastel on its side, and really good coverage. Now don't worry too much if you go over into the edge, because we still, that's why I haven't done the background. I can just bring that background edge in a little bit. So sometimes the biggest thing is like sometimes the pastels sets that you have may not have many dark colours in, so we have to kind of layer up a little bit and just be kind of experimental, which is why pastels are really good for us to use actually. We get so used to paints like being able to mix every combination. So it's really good to blow that excess away. It's really good to have a material where you are more limited because you kind of make bolder choices sometimes, and that does actually work. So I'm going in with them, just looking at what else I've got. I've got a dark red and a brown, so I'm going with those two colours together. It is very dark around this front. I don't know it to be too brown though, but this is more of a, I'd say this is more of a reddy brown. So it's kind of got that warmth that these kind of berry colours have got as well. So that's quite good. So even if we haven't quite got the colours that we want, we can kind of get a likeness by just by layering up some colours really. So I'm going there, I'm going in with kind of some mid tones as well. These slightly brighter ones, that kind of just adds a little bit of depth to what we've got going on. Wherever you can see those, put those in. Any other colours that you think, like slightly lighter ones that you want to pop in there, the brighter ones. We're just kind of building it up, aren't we, really, with what we can see, with what choices we've got. Before we go in with the pops of colour as well. No real kind of they are quite the colours are quite berry colours, aren't they? Until this point. Give them a big good clear, and if you're going in with any lighter colours, just get your hands nice and clear. That can be the issue. And you get very covered. Okay. So just have a little look. Like, what colour do you want to use? I'm just going to go in the lighter pink here. Just kind of get this little reflection here in the jar there. Quite soft. Also quite soft areas, not too bright. But again, it's just open to interpretation, really. So you can pop on what you want. And then we've got this like this edge of the jar, so I'm going to go in with quite a bright one here. This is where I need quite a bit of pressure. I think I'm just going to kind of actually pop in where the top of that lid is as well. You can go with a pop of, a brighter version, just to get some contrast in there rather than going in with a white, for example. If it's not white, it's just, it's there's a pop of colour in there, but you're not sure what that colour actually is, then just try a bright. Just what I'm doing here. And obviously we've got the inside. Some kind of pops of brights as well in there. So I'm popping some of these slightly brighter ones. Just the way I think the light's shining down on it now. Just to get some colour in there. So many colours, isn't there? There we go. So I'm putting all of this in place before I go in with any lights or anything. So again, we've got this to work out what colour you think it is on the top. I'm going to go in with kind of a peachy colour again. And again, it's difficult to see. It's almost got a bit of that froth on, hasn't it? So, and we start to just pop in the inside rim there. I'm just kind of getting some of these, main bits on here now. Got some quite bright bits on the inside. And then we've got this interesting area underneath where we've got a few little highlights on the jar that's kind of shining between, where the jar twists on, where the screw cap goes on. Jar lid. Again, you might just give your pastel a bit of a clean off if it's getting a bit congested. And then going in with some bright pops on top of that. And then some underneath here. And then it just starts this amazing, that last little bit, how one small area of light can just transform the feel of this jar in such an easy way, really. Yeah. Yeah, and you might have other areas you want to kind of make a bit lighter or whatever. And again, you know, the only other thing is that we've got such a dark shadow underneath there. It's kind of finding it morphs into the bottom of this jar actually. So that's what I was saying before. It's quite difficult to see where the shadow ends, and where the jar ends and where the shadow begins here. So it does kind of go into. So all I'm doing there is I'm adding just brown rather than purple and brown on there, just so that there's some differentiation. So you can only just make that out if you look really carefully. Give that good fix into place. And I would just literally just be bringing up, bringing this colour all the way down, and just kind of give edge my jar if it needs kind of moving in shape or anything. Just got to be careful, my fingers are nice and clean there after, so I don't wipe all of this in. Same on that side. And then we'll have a little quick look at this fingers, which shouldn't take a couple of minutes anyway, really. So it's great, so you can kind of just bring in as well. If your jar needs adjusting, you can just kind of bring that in with a shape, just gently. So where the fingers are, over here, it just kind of adds a bit more context, doesn't it? You can also, so the one other thing you might want to do is, if there's any other darker shadows you want to put back, that's really helpful. Once you've done your really dark shadow here, you might think, oh, you know what, I want to make that a bit darker, so that is a bit clearer. Then by all means, pop those in, because we're looking for balance in our picture as well. Anyway, so the fingers, we've just got two really simple shapes, but it's very difficult to see because they're kind of quite diffused and a little bit out of focus. So just go in with a kind of a base colour that you want to use. They're quite light as well, aren't they? So there's a knuckle, a finger and a knuckle at the front here. Comes down, but it's really unclear. So I'm just going in with just a peachy colour there. That knuckle comes in, the finger, it's like the finger edge, isn't it? And then the actual knuckles are there. So we've got another here, and the finger kind of comes back and then the knuckle shapes over the top. There, so that's all we can do is to put those two shapes in. Just get a base for that, base colour. I might put shadow back between the fingers so you can see them. Yeah, so I'm going to be careful just to kind of gently go over the top of that one, put more pressure. But yeah, I've got some sense that there's a thumb or something there, I'm not sure. That's how loose it is and how little we can actually see it. Well, I'm going to pop back in, do that with some the red colour. Just pop back in the finger shape there. It was quite warm, the colour. Just kind of pop in a suggestion that there is some kind of a shape there. But again, we just can't see it very clearly. And then, so then I'm just going to make that a bit, just dab that so it's kind of out of focus, because you can dab everything out of focus. So I'm just going to pop in, it's quite warm here. There's a bit of warmth with your pastel pencil. But again, it's not clear, you know, and there's a kind of a purpley where the back of the knuckle is there, purpley shade. You just literally just kind of replicating that shape. It's a bit curved, but we're not sure what it is. So again, tap it out of focus. That's all we've got is this out of focus shape. And there's a bit of even darker colour kind of in the middle, just over the top there. So I'm going to get that in. And then under the thumb here, it's a bit warmer. So I'm going to kind of just not knowing what it is, but just placing a little bit of a shape under there. And then the same under here, it's a bit warmer under there. We're getting a bit of shape, that there's some kind of a finger or something there. Pushing that in. And then we want kind of a lighter highlight because it's not really catching there, isn't it? So this will be the bit that kind of makes this stick out more like a knuckle. So kind of comes along and then over top of that top finger. And then in here. There's a kind of a bit of a shape there. And maybe on the top of here, because again, we can't really see what's going on there at all, can we? That's it, really. I'm just going to bring the background up a little bit there. Yeah, so there we go. We just got some kind of a suggestion of the fact that there's this knuckle here, but we don't definitely know. But it's really what the mind makes the shapes of, isn't it? Because it's kind of like, oh yeah, it could be a person holding that or having a go at holding something, but we're not quite sure. Yeah, I suppose the only thing I might do is just make more of a gap there. Yeah, and I'll probably just leave it there, to be fair. And then there's just the nail, isn't there? So again, you can just go in with a base colour and then just add all of the similar tones that we've got there, any darks, any lights. Make that part of it so it makes sense. On the top there. Um, Yeah, so just all sorts of different things. The most important thing is to have a little look at it as well in the morning, in the distance, and then and come back to it and see what, because it does look different. I mean, even if I peel, you know, and she start, it's just a bit more gentle than that better. But if I peel, you know, if you peel off the edge, you get a very different feel as well. You know, when you come back to your piece, once you look at it in a slightly different way without the edge on it. And it can look completely different that way. Yeah, so that's our having a little really good experiment tonight, aren't we? With you know, how all the colours and everything reflect and create these really interesting shapes. So I hope that's been really helpful. Just come back to everybody, and I hope you enjoyed that.